The person we're going to talk about today is someone you're probably already familiar with, Marco Polo. He was born in 1254 in Venice, into a family that had become rich through trade. However, Marco grew up without his parents. His mother had died when he was young, and his father and uncle were away travelling for most of Marco's childhood. His father and brother were traders in jewellery, and they'd been to Asia, including China. One day they came back home to Venice and found Marco, who by this time had grown into a young man. The next time they set off on a journey, they took Marco with them. They set out for Asia again in 1271. The leader of the church in Italy, the Pope, had told them to take two priests with them, with the goal of introducing Christianity to people in Asia. However, after these two priests had seen what life on the road was like, how difficult it was, how arduous it was, they decided to go back home. The three Polos travelled to Asia by land, as this was before the time when ships could sail there easily. The journey was extremely difficult, and they had to travel across places like Afghanistan and the Gobi Desert. However, although it was an arduous journey, Marco loved it. He loved the sense of adventure and discovery that came with seeing places that very few Europeans had ever seen before. After 4 years, they finally arrived in China, which at that time was controlled by the Yuan dynasty, the Mongols. The Polos had originally only planned to be away for a few years, but in the end they stayed for more than 23. They learnt the language and became popular with the Mongol rulers. They were even given jobs to do. Marco, for example, was made an envoy. An envoy is someone who is sent by a government to a different country to be the government's representative there. It's like a diplomat or a messenger. Marco was sent as the envoy to places like Burma and India. This was not actually unusual. At the time there were many foreigners working for the Mongols, but they mostly came from Persia, now Iran, and the Arab world. After 17 years, however, the Polos finally decided to go home. On their way home, they were given one last job to do. They were meant to take a Mongol princess to Persia because she was going to marry one of the princes there. This time they did decide to go by sea, not by land. The Polos left in a ship with hundreds of other people, but their journey was extremely difficult. Most of the people with them died because of huge storms or disease. By the time they reached Persia, only 18 people were left alive. The Polos finally returned home after many years, but Marco's adventures were not over yet. Venice went to war with one of the neighbouring countries, and Marco Polo joined one of the ships that was going off to fight. However, he was caught and put in prison. While he was in this prison, he met a writer, who said he'd write down the story of Marco's amazing life. Marco told him everything that he'd seen and done, and it became the most popular book in Europe. There has been a lot of argument and speculation about whether Marco Polo really did see and do all the things he talked about in the book. Some people say he didn't even go to China. They say there are lots of famous things about China that he didn't talk about. But there are other people that say he definitely did go there. They say there are things he talks about that would have been impossible to know if he hadn't been there. The book talks about things like paper money, which China invented a long time before Europe, and using coal for energy. Up until Marco's death, many people refused to believe he had seen all these things. But Marco famously said, "I have not told half of what I saw." The most popular opinion now is that a lot of what he wrote was true, but that some of it included stories and things he heard from other people, other travellers. But whatever the truth is, one thing is certain. Marco Polo was one of the first people to bring Asia to the attention of Europe. His journey inspired many other travellers and explorers. It is even said that when Christopher Columbus sailed off from Europe to try and discover Asia, he took a copy of Marco Polo's book with him.